Hello everyone, welcome back. This is 2-8 circuits, miscellaneous circuits in the compact redstone series. I'm MU222 and today I will talk about some miscellaneous circuits, which basically means that circuits that basically do not include in any other category. So yeah, this video will be very diverse, so I would show you a lot of different types of circuits that might be useful in your redstone builds. Although they are not categorized, they are still very useful in your applications, I think. So without further ado, let's get started. I'll start with the most useful one that you would see, which is going to be piston extender sliders. Because quite frankly, we will have some piston doors that require stacked piston extenders, and using sliders would be a great tool because sliders can basically help us to power things that are in between pistons that we cannot reach otherwise. So here I have the first setup for you, which is a stacked downwards double piston extender using observer sliders. So I guess this concept is actually very simple. I'll just demonstrate it here. You have, as I previously mentioned in, I think, 2-6 circuits, more on piston extender circuits, I think, that you can have two sequences for this kind of double piston extender. So the standard sequence would be powering the top slider first, and then the bottom slider, and then the top slider again, and then the bottom slider. So, yep. The retraction works as well. You can also use the alternative sequence that instead of doing A, B, A, B, you do B, then A, then B, and same thing goes B, oops, sorry, B, A, B. So yeah, this also works, but then usually when you're doing this kind of slider, you want to do the standard sequence because it will make your life a bit more easier because you can always group your circuits better. And one more thing to add from me is that you usually don't have these two pistons stacked together. You usually would have one at the back, and then you can just add another slider block here, just for example. So yeah, you don't have both of them stacked together like this usually. But then here I will just show you this setup as an example. You can just use it in your doors for applications. I don't care. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically going to be the first circuit I will introduce to you. The second circuit is actually very similar, but instead of downwards, we have upwards. So again, it's double piston extenders because we like them. So yeah, anyway. So this setup, instead of having both of these observers going into the piston stack, we have the bottom observer line going into the piston stack, but then the top line is actually powering through these blocks, so these blocks have to be solid. So if we power this like this, it just extends and then retracts. And then for the retraction, same thing, extends and retracts. So very nice. However, you can see that there is a control circuit like this, so basically one tick after you want to power the top piston, basically. So yeah, that's the thing. And if I remember correctly, you can also do some kind of thing like this, which is actually pretty cool. Oh, not on this side. So yeah. Anyway, so you can do on the extension side, the initial side, but not on this side, I guess. I'll just replace it. So yeah, anyway. And then I need to reset you. Okay, so off tangent, but anyway, besides on having this input join for both sides, you can actually have on the initial side to have both pistons powering at the same time. It actually still works. So, yeah. So you can already see there are a lot of different ways that you can power these sliders, so including the one that I've introduced to you, which is using this updated piston. So make sure you only do it on the initial side again, just like this one, and not on the side. So the other side really requires this to work, so yeah, don't change that, I guess. So that's going to be the second one. Now, you might think, what about the sides? So basically, double piston extenders that are stacked sideways. Well, we usually don't do double sliders for these sideways double piston extenders. However, there are many one slider approaches that you can do. So I'm not going to show it here because it is actually quite simple. You can just stack up observer lines and then redstone dust, and you just power all of those. So yeah, it's actually quite simple. Not very complex, to be honest. So yeah, and if you're wondering how you would do, like for example stacking like this, then it's actually just quite simple. You don't even need to do sliders at this point. All you need to do is to have these. You just stack them all over. So yeah, that already works. Okay, so I have finished talking about the stacked double piston extenders, but then what happens when you have double piston extenders next to single piston extenders, which is actually very frequent in our piston doors? So I will show you some designs for downwards, upwards, and sideways. Actually, all three of them. The most developed one is actually upwards. Sorry, not upwards, downwards. This kind of slider, I'm not sure if you can see it clearly. You can always check out the work download in the description below if you want to check it out more. But yeah, anyway, so this kind of slider, it is initially by NewcomerMC. And then I have made some improvements to it, essentially adding this toggle, because this is actually the magic to this slider, basically. Also, just so happens that I forgot to add the player heads, but anyway, I'll just add it in the work download, I think. Yeah. So yeah, you can see what it does. Basically, it will just do this. You can see that these blocks get pushed down, these blocks as well. And then if we do the same thing, it all retracts. So you might be curious of how it works. Basically, it uses the alternative approach for the doubles. The singles, they were just power ones. I will just do... Essentially, what it is doing is that... How do I explain it this well? Okay, so let's just see the retraction in action. So maybe I'll just slow it down. So you can see that these observers is going to be pushed. So it powers those pistons down there, and then that observer gets pushed, which oh, oops. I'll just do this slow-mo again. So same thing. These power, and then all of the stack gets moved back, and then these three power, and then you can see the front slider actually also pushes by this observer. So it pushes these front sliders such that these blocks would be powered by the observers powering these pistons. And also this is better for you to have a chest here. So, and then if we power this again, you would see that it alternates again. These pistons power, and all of the sliders get pushed back. So the back pistons, the double piston extended back pistons, are going to pull up these three sticky pistons, and then this observer will only power this slider here now, so only these three will power. So yeah, it's just basically like that. So you can see how it basically works. So this is like a toggle for the front sliders, but then it basically is just a circuit that always powers this piston. It will always power this piston, but not for the front two. And this basically the same thing. When the block is here, then it can push, and this it will always be here. This is not always going to be here, so it already does a toggle for itself. I hope this explains clearly to you. In case if you still need to just check out how it works in detail, you can just slow it down or just get the work down. So yeah, it will be easier for you to experiment it on yourself. And yeah, and just to mention, this is a 5 stacked extender. You can actually extend it up to the push limit. So instead of having odd number, you can also have even number. So this is just a variant of it. So you can see just adding this here. The criteria is that you need to make sure that this observer is always 1 block from this piston. So yeah, yes, you can already see the importance of it. It powers this sticky piston. So this is actually very important. So you just need to make sure that this observer is always going to be able to power the sticky piston. So yeah, always make sure that the observer, when it gets pushed, it will power this piston. So like otherwise, if you have here at this position, then it cannot power this sticky piston. So it's not good. So yeah, just make sure that this allows. So yeah, this is the 6 stacked variant. So yeah, all of them are 6. So very nice. And yeah, that solves very nicely for the singles and double case when they're stacked together. And quite frankly, it's very useful. Now I'll talk about the upwards solution. The upwards is less developed, quite frankly, because of how complicated it can get. And also, by the way, if you are not noticing, I'm going to show you 2 wide designs. Because 3 wide designs, you can just have singles be 1 slider, and then doubles, just use this. So yeah, I'm just going to show you the 2 wide designs, because 2 wide designs are very essential. You usually will have some other circuits that will be going on here, and you don't want to interfere with that. So 2 wide designs. For the bottom ones, I mean upwards ones, they are usually in the bottom circuit, but yeah. You're basically going to do some arbor circuits and then some controlling, I can tell you. Because what happens is that you need to sort out the doubles first and facilitate the single blocks as the powering for the doubles. So here you can see 2 ticks apart between this slider and this slider. So this fully extends and then it would retract. And the reason for the 2 tick delay, this here is the same, is because you want to retract these pistons at this location or this position. So yeah, because we are using buds, so it must be a 2 tick. I hope that you have learned this from 2-6 circuits, more in piston extended circuits, where I talked about extended principles and stuff like that. And yeah, after we do the doubles, we can finally do the singles. So singles is literally just powering these 2 pistons. So in practical, you can just have this observer here, like so. Although I'll just use this. And then I can use this as well. And I'm kind of stupid. I set up this incorrectly. You just set up the same circuit. There we go. So the opening, or actually the retraction I should say, would be to power the singles first, so you can see the arbor going on, because you need to have the singles going last, doing the extension, and going first, doing the retraction. So you can see the arbor is very much needed to facilitate for the double. So the double just does its thing again. just like this. So yeah, we are just facilitating front this top slider to push these observers. So yeah. That's why you can see it's important. This also means that these front blocks have to be solid. So yeah, the door blocks have to be solid. You have no choice. But yeah, it is a minor issue for us, so I don't really care. So yeah, that is the upward solution. It is useful for once for me, I think. Except I only needed a free stat, which is just one less, so it's actually quite easy to deal with. But yeah, anyway, hopefully you would find this useful. So I will talk about the sideways one, which is actually just another creative thing that I've just come up with recently. So the logic is essentially the same, except you have a bit more variance to it. First off, you can use the same arbor thing, like here, except this time you want to do the extension first for the singles, if you wish to, and then do the doubles. So how will you do the doubles? So you first part the slider first, and then you would have this wacky thing that does this. These observers extend to power these pistons at the front. Also notice that this is still a 4 stacked solution, because anything upon 4 is actually very complicated. So I'll just show you this 4 stacked one. And hopefully you won't get into those bigger solutions. So yeah. And then we just do this again. And then it actually also retracts. So yeah. And the opening again is reversed. We don't do the front pistons yet. We do the doubles. So you can see either you retract. And yeah. And I guess you can also already see why these front pistons have to retract last. It is because these pistons are going to move these 4 blocks in front, and it's just wasteful for you to do any pulses at the start, basically. I mean, you can do it, but then it doesn't really matter. Okay, anyway, so you can already see there are some variations going through it. One is that the extension, during the extension of the double, you can actually choose not to fire this slider at all, because this slider at the back will automatically do itself. So you can just have an opening toggle that just powers this at the suitable amount of delay. So yeah, you can see there are a lot of variations. Like you can always, on the opening, you can just power this slider if you want to, but then it will just get cancelled. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, there are a lot of variations to it, so feel free to customize it yourself. And don't just get limited to what I've showed you here. You can always customize your sliders. That's the point of Redstone, I think. So yeah, I'm just showing you these circuits as an example, just to show you how sliders can be incorporated into your piston extenders or piston doors. So yeah, don't just copy and paste it, I guess. Like if you need some customizations, do it. So yeah. Now I will move on from the singles and doubles connecting together and talk about a very specific slider, which is that what happens when you have multiple singles joining together and you want to power them, but then you only have, let's say, a 1 high space. That's where this 3-state slider comes in. So this is an example. What you wanted to do is to do this. So basically, power this, and then power this at a suitable amount of delay, and then you power this. Make sure that these 2 pistons are going to fire basically one after the other. So you don't have to exactly do this thing. You can also do this, actually. This also works. but I guess this is just more cooler. And yeah. So yeah, just like that. And feel free to reverse the action actually. It still works the same. So yeah, you can always have these two pistons that go first and then these two pistons that go. So yeah. Again, you can see sliders have a lot of customizations possible for you. So don't just stick to one rule or one circuit because you're going to miss out. And yeah. So let me just briefly talk about some disadvantages on the sliders. So all you can see here, except for these two. So the double single hybrid, you can say. The disadvantage is that it needs to be a multiple of 2 mainly. For the singles especially. The doubles you can still customize it. For the singles it's actually quite unavoidable. So yeah, you need to deal with the singles being in weird locations, for example. So yeah. It's not really that much, but then yeah. For a 3-state one, the same thing arises, except you need to have multiples of 3. That's it. So yeah, just pay attention to that, I guess. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about Piston extended sliders, which is going to be the most useful topic in this video. I will talk about some other less useful but still hopefully useful for you circuits and some general concepts, I guess. So I will move on to talk about some basic 06 generators. So this, you have seen this before. It's just a repeated comparator 06 generator using Celtic priority. So in 2-3 Celtic priority racing edition, and their applications already said that. So nothing much. Also, if you haven't noticed, I use armor stand tests here. Armor stand tests have been introduced in 2-2 haptic components and their applications. So yeah, if you are not sure, you can just check that video out, I guess. So yeah, this is one way, but then usually we don't have this space. Let's be real. What we have instead might be some one-way cases in which this will be useful, for example. So what if you cannot comprehend with why this works? Essentially, this observer is going to update this piston because it turns on, nothing happens, but when it turns off, this observer is actually powering through this block but powering this piston, of course, and this observer is able to update this piston for causing it to power. But then as it's but powered, it basically means after 3 game ticks, it will retract. So yeah, that's it. And if the redstone block is only here for... No, how should I say this? If this piston is only extended for 3 game ticks, then what happens is that this redstone block is only here for 0 game ticks. And it, of course, will power this piston with a 0 tick. So yeah, simple timings, I guess. Another way of doing 0 ticks is actually just have an updated piston. So you added 1 block event delay bed. And this is one example. So when this observer gets retracted, it does a 0 tick pulse. Like so. But doing the extender, it doesn't. It does a 1 tick pulse instead, or 2 game tick. So yeah. So how would you ensure that both of the pulses are 0 tick with it? So this just works. It's just a 2 tick, nothing much. So yeah, all of these you have seen this before. It's not really that much. So yeah, I'm just telling you the basics of 0 tick generators that you can make in a compact way. And last but not least, again, sliders. Sliders are still very important. So you can see that in some cases we would use the 0 tick slider because it just, quite frankly, is very useful when you want to have, for example, singles powering it through here. And it actually has a very nice animation, I guess, like compared to some traditional sliders like this, where you have alternating observers, and that you also need to power from both sides. There's also one disadvantage to this because you need to power from both sides. So like this. So yeah. So you can already see worse animation, need to power on both sides. Not that nice. But then this here automatically sends. And yeah. So being in sync has some nice things that we can. Oops, sorry. Has some nice properties that we can make use of. And in addition, if you're only going to be to power from one side, or like the ability of just needing to power from one side is also an advantage in some way. Although some other times you would find the alternating observer slider going to be more useful. But yeah, anyway. So that is going to be all of the zero-tick generators, and this particularly zero-tick slider. I will talk about burnouts, which I haven't actually introduced them until now. Quite surprising. So let's just talk about uncontrolled burnouts. So uncontrolled burnouts, like this one, is going to give 8 1-tick or 2 game tick pulses. So basically this piston is going to fire 8 times and spit out the block and retract the block. If you cannot see it clearly, let's just slow it down and count the pulses. This might be too slow actually. 2, 3, 4 times 2, that's 8. There we go. So yeah, you've seen how it's going to be useful. Or no, you have seen the basic property, I mean. So let's just see how it would be useful. So for example, we have this here. This is actually taken from exercise 7.6 in 1-7, basic circuits, poles, extenders, multipliers, and clocks. That's if I update this burnouts, then the piston worm is just going to send like so. And this matches because we have 8 pulses, so it pushes up 4 blocks. Makes sense. And same thing goes downwards. Although usually in real applications, you would see more of this instead, because you only need to send up, not sending down. Sending down comes from the top, not from the bottom. So yeah. Also, when I say that this is taken from the exercise, I don't really mean it. Because this is actually, I think this is actually not the solution that I allowed in the particular exercise. I instead have given you a circuit that is a controllable clock, not a burnout. So yeah, just to mention, if you have tried that exercise before, this is not actually a valid solution, I think. But yeah, anyway, it's still very nice for us to just look back on how burnouts would be useful in these situations. So another thing that burnouts is going to be useful is that it can create double pulse, like this. So say if I have a 4-tick repeater, there's a 4-tick pulse going to a burnout that's being turned on now, and you can see that it gives 2 pulses like this. So yeah, very nice. And then, more importantly, this is also quite a usual trick that I use, is that we can have burnouts that creates, that powers a redstone lamp, such that the redstone lamp takes forever to turn off. Well, not forever, but then it takes a long time for it to turn off, which creates 2 distant pulses, and is useful in some applications. For example, you have a pulse that would connect to a sequence of moves that you want to power, but then it takes so long that naturally any very close pulses, so for example maybe even a 4-tick to a lamp, might not even work for it because it's actually still very close to each other. So you need a distant pulsing mechanism. So this acts a very good solution to that, because you can see just how far apart those two are. So yeah. Another trick that I have used. Actually, no. Before I talk about the other trick, I wanted to tell you that. So this is a valid 2 distant pulse generator, but then there are also other types of 2 distant pulse generators. One of them is hopper ROMs. I've introduced it earlier. I forgot the video already. Yeah, whatever. Although I would still explain hopper ROMs more in detail in 3-5 hopper ROM programming. Although that would be actually very complex. And yeah, I think 2 distant poles hopper ROMs aren't going to be a challenge for any of you who are watching this video already. It's actually very simple. Just have a ROM that would change a signal strength twice with a distance delay. That's it. Now, another way of doing 2 distant poles generator is using entities. The entity method will be discussed in 2-10 entity usage and entity circuits. So yeah, I'll just show you some useful entity stuff that you can use to create 2 distant pulses. Yes. So one final thing about burnouts is that this is a useful trick. So a lamp connecting to your observer, going to burnouts, and if you power it with a wooden button, it does a burnout naturally. So nothing special here. When I say nothing special, I mean nothing special. And it does it again. Wait, what? No, just kidding. So basically, if you have a wooden button here, connecting through a lamp, it has to be basically exactly this setup. And then with an observer, and then pointing towards this block, it will create 2 pulses. No, no, not 2 pulses. It would get the burnout fire twice, basically. Not sure why this happened. This is actually a feature since 1.13. So this is actually very useful because you can already see how a possible solution for a 4 distant pulse generator could be. Literally just from this, and then just detecting from here. So it's going to be very useful. And indeed, I've already used it in my downwards quadruple piston extender. So yeah. Just show you the usefulness from this. So I guess that is going to be the things I will talk about burnouts. Let's move on to some silly sand circuits that I've made. So let's just go on with the basics. So sand circuits, what useful thing you can get from it? Well, the first thing is that it basically acts as a pulse extender. This piston would turn off later than this piston, for obvious reasons, because sand takes time to fall. Which also, hence, explains why these 2 pistons, while during powering, they turn on as they pulse at the same time, but then when turning off, this pulses later than this. So yeah, you can see that like the sand taking time to fall down can create a pulse extender for us. What else is sand is going to be useful? Well, essentially, pulse generator. Like this. So yeah, this is a natural pulse generator, and then this is a 2 pulse generator. Both of these are 5 tick apart, I think. You can just testify it. And then there are also other things that are less noticeable, is that they can actually do double pulsing. So instead of 5 tick pulse apart, or 10 game ticks, you can do double pulsing if you detect it in another location. So yeah, depending on which location is detecting the sand, it gives different properties, basically. So yeah. And then one final thing is that, unfortunately, this feature has been deleted since 1.18.2, but I'm just going to show you anyway. I'm in 1.18.1, by the way. So, this here basically shows how this piston can be retracted in 3 game ticks. Normally, you have this that retracts in 2 game ticks, but then with sand, you can retract in 3 game ticks. This is a very useful odd game tick delay, because quite frankly, if you're doing fast doors, then odd game tick delay is going to be one of the things that you must do. But then Mojang decided that they would remove this due to a bug caused by sand causing lag. So yeah, this feature has now been removed. If you play in 1.18.2 plus, these two pistons are going to be retracted at the same time. So yeah, basically that. So very unfortunate, but there's nothing we can do. We can just cope with it. So hopefully you would find the other half tick components useful. And this is also the reason why I didn't even include this sand trick in the half tick component video, because of the recent change. So yeah, that's all I'm going to talk about these sand circuits. I will talk about some multiple pulsing techniques, which is just basically some properties I guess you should remember, and some general circuits. So first off, we have the double pulsing. This should be by far very familiar to you already. I'm sure that everyone knows it. And the second thing is just a double pulsing single pulse generator. That is very useful when you need to do something like this, for example. So yes, like sometimes you need to have a double pulse and a single pulse, whether for the retraction of this, or you just need to have an odd amount of pulses. Like sometimes you just have this arbitrarily to give an odd amount of pulse because you cannot do it. I will explain it a bit more clear. So like for example, you have a button input, say. Then you would need to give a pulse to this piston. Now, this is out of reach. So what you want to do instead, if you want to connect it in like one white space, is just do this. So instead of doing one pulse, it now does 3 pulses, which is very funny. But then it's still an odd number of pulses, so it's nice enough. So yeah, sometimes you'll see these kind of tricks just popping up randomly, and I hope you would find it useful. Another thing that is very wacky is that you can have a 1 pulse, 3 pulse generator. So yeah, 1 pulse and then 3 pulses. I hope you know why this happens. It's actually quite simple to explain it, but then you can just see it yourself. And then I'll just speed through these last 3 and then talk about the exercises. So the first one is actually a triple pulse generator. This is a piston base. This fires twice, and this will fire 3 times. You can explain it with timings, I think. It should be easy for you. Anyway. While this is actually not a triple pulse generator, but just a 2 pulse generator, but then this lamp is going to be turned on slightly longer, such that this piston will retract a bit slower. Just like that. And practically, you can always extend the line of this pistons and then run to a redstone lamp, such that the redstone lamp would take forever to turn off. But then in compact circuits, you usually don't have the chance to do that. So hopefully you won't need to chain a lot of these stuff in your compact things, otherwise it won't be really that compact already. And then the third thing you need to remember is that if you have a redstone lamp to a redstone lamp and then to this piston, this is actually quite frequently used. This is a 3 pulse generator, although not as fast as this one, but then this one still serves as its usage, because you can see this piston occupies these 2 blocks while the redstone lamp is literally just 1.1 high. So what do you want? So you can even twist it in other ways, and they don't get affected by quasi, which is one feature. Of course, sometimes quasi is useful, but sometimes it's not. You actually want to avoid quasi. So, and moreover, the pulse frequency of the redstone lamp to this observer is actually slower by 1 tick compared to this one. So that sometimes is useful. So depending on what you need to use it. So yeah. Before I go, I would talk about some useful resources. As I've already mentioned before, in I think 2-6 circuits extenders, one piston extenders. I think that's I would create a circuit database, which is still work in progress, and yeah, again, people from the far future can probably see it, but yeah, currently it's just my initial idea. So once I started working on it, I'll just put the link in the documents that I will provide you along with the work downloads in the description below. So yeah, let's go on to the exercises. The exercises for this time is actually a bit more interesting, hopefully. So 2 of them are piston doors, 2 of them are just some. One of them is some silly circuit building. The one is actually involving a bit of timing analysis and just involving some knowledge from multiple pulsing, I guess. So this one is quite silly. It's literally just telling you to build a seamless piston door with the pattern and then some pistons, and then the volume restriction is 16 by 10 by 3, 480 blocks. So essentially what this means is that you only have this amount of space to work with. So along with these, they are sized. Also notice there is a line of blocks at the back. I intentionally made it like this, just so that you would use some of the circuits I've introduced earlier. And then I would talk about the second one. The second one is literally just to retract the entire piston stack to this. And also if you need to reset the circuit, you can just reset it with this. So yeah. The third one is a bit more interesting, which is separated into 2 modules. One is that it basically asks you how many pulses does this piston receive, and explain it in terms of timings. So use your knowledge from 1-11 introduction to timings and 2-4 accounting input bug and more on timings to explain this. Although you probably just need 1-11 knowledge. And then the right module, what is the purpose of the 3 pistons marked with blue wool? So these 3 pistons. So hopefully you would use some properties that you can interpret from the section I've just talked about there to explain. I didn't really explain it exactly in the video just now, but then you should be able to interpret some results, hopefully. And hence, how many pulses does the redstone dust on the line will receive? So here. So you just place a piston and just count it, to be honest. But then, yeah, just asking you. And hence, you want to determine the pulse length received by the yellow wall. What I wanted you to learn from this exercise is essentially how these 3 pistons are going to be useful for the pulses generated here, and hence how it determines the pulse length here. This is what I wanted you to learn. That's it. And the fourth one, finally, is another piston door building. The pattern is like this. It's called an onion ring. I haven't really updated here. So, build a seamless piston door with the given piston layout and inside wall. Volume is 195 blocks, and to be honest, this is actually a very challenging question. Essentially, I'm just telling you to build a world record from scratch, although it's not really that impressive of one. So I've given you some hints. That is to use the 3-stage slider for both top and bottom, and the final build should be 15 long and 30 high. So essentially, again, this here, top 1 block, bottom 1 block. So the sides are supposed to be 2 blocks. So yeah, good luck on the design, good luck on the exercises, and I hope you find some joy from it and learn something more. So yeah, do it if you want to, as it will enhance your wrestling skills, I guess. And hopefully you also learned something from this video. And once again, the solutions are at the back, although I actually haven't even placed the solutions here yet, so I can just let you see for free. But yeah, if you want to see the solutions, feel free to go to the back of this wall so you can always just see it. So yeah. Thank you for watching this video. Next video would be actually 2-9, more on terminologies, which would actually be probably a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm not going to really be on a Minecraft world. So yeah, I will see you in another Minecraft world in 2-10, entity usage and entity circuits. So yeah, thank you for watching.